Magandang umaga sa inyong lahat! Welcome muli sa ating lakbay. Para sa susunod na 3 talks, pag-uusapan natin kung papaano gumawa at ibahagi ang iyong personal testimony. Nakikita mo ba ang nakikita ko o yung bagay na hawak ko ngayon? Ano ba ito? Tama! Ito ay isang paperclip. Para saan ba ang isang paperclip? Okay, may naririnig ako sa inyo. Ang paperclip ay ginagamit para pagsamasamahin ang ilang mga pages na papel upang ito'y maging organized. Naisip mo na ba kung itong mga non-living things na ito, tulad ng paperclip, ay may purpose, edi mas lalo tayo. May purpose sa iyong buhay at nasa iyo kung paano mo ito gagamitin. Tignan natin ang iba't ibang mga kilalang tao at kung paano nila ginamit ang kanilang buhay para sa iisang layunin.
Leonardo da Vinci is well renowned for his expertise in a variety of subjects, including painting, sculpting, engineering, geology, botany, mathematics, and various other disciplines within the artistic and scientific realms. Leonardo was born out of wedlock to a respected Florentine businessman and a peasant woman in Vinci, Italy, hence the name Da Vinci, meaning of Vinci. As a young teenager, Da Vinci became the apprentice of an artist in Florence known as Verrocchio. A 16th century biographer of Renaissance painters claimed that Da Vinci's contribution to his master's painting, The Baptism of Christ, was so profound that Verrocchio abandoned his paintbrush and never painted again. Da Vinci's earliest known work was a drawing of the Arno Valley from the year 1473. One of Da Vinci's first independent works was the Adoration of the Magi, a painting commissioned by the monks of the San Donato a Scopeta. It was never completed. In the late 15th century, Da Vinci spent nearly 20 years in Milan, where he was commissioned by the Confraternity of the Immaculate Conception to paint the Virgin of the Rocks, and by the monastery of Santa Maria del Grazie to paint the Last Supper. Da Vinci was employed on a variety of different projects by Ludovico il Moro, Duke of Milan, including designs for Milan's cathedral dome and a model for an enormous equestrian monument to Francesco Sforza, Ludovico's predecessor. After the start of the Second Italian War in 1499, Da Vinci fled to Venice, and then back to Florence, where he created the Virgin and the Child with St. Anne and St. John the Baptist. Da Vinci became an engineering and architectural advisor to Cesare Borgia, son of Pope Alexander VI, by presenting him with a map and town plan of Imola, Borgia's fortification. Some of Da Vinci's other works include the famed small portrait known as the Mona Lisa. Completed in the early 16th century, the Mona Lisa was purchased by Francis I of France, and is on permanent display at the Musée du Louvre in Paris. One of the great innovations of this work is the relaxed three-quarter pose of the subject. The subject's enigmatic smile and the pyramidal composition of the portrait were also Da Vinci's innovations. Da Vinci's technique of layering translucent layers of colour in order to create subtle depth, volume and form lent to a realism that was unparalleled at the time. Da Vinci's studies in science and engineering are as profound and ingenious as his artistic work. The Vitruvian Man, pen and ink on paper, depicts a male figure and is based on ideal human proportions as described by the ancient Roman architect Vitruvius. His notes and drawings include studies of human anatomy and dissection, animals, plants, rock formations, and even concepts for war machines similar to tanks, as well as a drawing of a flying machine. Leonardo died in 1519. As his life's work continues to dazzle and inspire millions, Leonardo da Vinci will always be known as the original Renaissance man. Steve Jobs was an American entrepreneur and the co-founder of Apple Incorporated. Jobs was born in San Francisco in 1955, and his birth parents decided to give the child up for adoption. The baby was adopted by Paul and Clara Jobs, and the young family moved to California when Steve was 5 years old. Jobs achieved good grades at school and became friends with an older student named Steve Wozniak, and the two friends began constructing simple computers with other students. Jobs graduated in 1972 and spent a short time at college before dropping out and attending a variety of creative classes for the next 18 months. Jobs then took a position at Atari in 1974 and worked with Steve Wozniak on circuit boards for video games, and worked on various technologies until they formed their own company, the Apple Computer Company. In 1976, Wozniak invented the Apple I computer, which Jobs convinced him to sell. He recruited several other people to the fledgling company until in 1984 the Apple Macintosh was introduced to the world. After several serious disagreements with other leading figures in the company, Jobs resigned from Apple and founded Next Computer in 1985, which achieved reasonable success. And 1 year later, Jobs purchased what is now known as Pixar for $10 million. The company went on to produce many highly successful animated movies with Jobs at the helm. Apple bought Next Computers for over $400 million in 1996, which meant that the technologies of Apple and Next now merged, and Jobs became CEO of Apple in the year 2000. The company then released the iPod music player, which, along with the iTunes music directory, revolutionized the personal music player market. In 2006, Jobs sold Pixar to Disney, for which Jobs received around 7% of Disney's stock. The company released its first cellular phone with the iPhone in 2007, along with many other consumer electronics, and was followed by several other iPhone products, followed later by the iPad. Jobs resigned as CEO of Apple in 2011, but remained as chairman of the board. Jobs had been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer in 2003 and underwent a liver transplant in 2009, but died 6 weeks after his resignation as CEO of Apple. Jobs' personal wealth at the time of his death was estimated at around $8 billion, and his visionary and creative genius and his ability to market new technologies to the world have shown him to be one of the most influential people of the modern age.
Vor uns liegt Deutschland, in uns marschiert Deutschland und hinter uns kommt Deutschland!
Adolf Hitler was an Austrian-born German politician and leader of the Nazi Party. Hitler was born on the 20th of April 1889 in the small village of Ranshofer in Austria. His family moved to Germany when he was 3 and he attended school where it was noted that he did not cope well with discipline. He was expelled in 1904 after his father died. He also had his applications for study rejected twice by the Academy of Fine Arts in Vienna. In 1907, after his mother died, he was able to move to Munich. He took up military service and was decorated for bravery in World War I. He was then recruited by the propaganda section of the army to preach German nationalism to the people and infiltrate the German Workers' Party, the DAP, to expose socialist members. Hitler impressed the DAP members with his oratory skills and officially joined the party in 1919. The party then changed its name to NSDAP, the National Social German Workers' Party. Hitler's popularity increased and he was made party chairman. After the Great Depression of 1930, Hitler's party became more popular, and in 1933 Hitler was made Chancellor of a coalition government in Germany. His NSDAP, now known as the Nazi Party, were declared the only legal party in Germany.
Wir wollen nicht liegen, wollen nicht schwindeln! Ich habe
After the President of Germany died, the presidential powers were transferred to Hitler, making him head of state and supreme commander of the armed forces. Germany began to improve economically under Hitler's rule, and as his power grew he began implementing anti-Semitic laws against the Jewish population of Germany. He also violated several parts of the Treaty of Versailles, and then invaded Poland on the 1st of September 1939, with Britain and France declaring war on Germany 2 days later, igniting World War II. 6 years later the Allies were victorious in the war, and facing defeat Hitler shot himself in a military bunker in Berlin on the 30th of April 1945. 6 million Jews, or 2/3 of the entire Jewish population of Europe at the time, were killed in concentration camps and work camps. Under Adolf Hitler's Nazi rule, almost 40 million people were killed, including 27 million Soviets and 17 million people who died as a result of his racially motivated policies. Mother Teresa founded the Missionaries of Charity. Today, the Missionaries of Charity have over 4,500 members and are active in 133 countries. She is known to the Catholic Church as Blessed Mother Teresa of Calcutta. Mother Teresa was born Agnes Gonja Bojaxhiu to a family of Albanian descent in Skopje, Macedonia on the 26th of August 1910. When Agnes was 18, she joined the Sisters of Loreto, an Irish community of nuns with missions in India. She would never again see her mother or sister. After a few months of training in Dublin, she was sent to India, where she took her initial vows as a nun. Whilst teaching in a convent school in eastern Calcutta, Mother Teresa became overwhelmed by the enormous levels of poverty that surrounded her. Events such as the Bengal famine resulted in the deaths of 7 to 10 million people. Hindu and Muslim violence also plagued the area, creating an atmosphere of fear and desperation. Mother Teresa left the convent and set out to aid the poorest of the poor. In 1950, Mother Teresa was granted permission from the Vatican to start the Missionaries of Charity, whose primary task, in her words, was to care for the hungry, the naked, the homeless, the crippled, the blind, the lepers, and all those people who feel unwanted, unloved, and uncared for throughout society. During the siege of Beirut in 1982, Mother Teresa rescued 37 children who were trapped in a hospital positioned near the front line. She negotiated a ceasefire between the Palestinian guerrillas and the Israeli army, and was able to evacuate the children successfully. She expanded her charities into Eastern Europe as the region became more open during the late 1980s. By the mid-1990s, Mother Teresa was operating more than 500 missions in over 100 countries. Mother Teresa received many awards and distinctions for her life's work, including the Pope John XIII Peace Prize, as well as the Nehru Prize for her promotion of international peace and understanding. Mother Teresa died on the 5th of September 1997. Her life and service to the poor has inspired millions to follow the same path. She was beatified by Pope John Paul in 2003, the latest step in her path towards sainthood. Osama bin Laden was born into a wealthy family in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia in 1957. Osama was raised as a devout Muslim and studied economics and business administration at university. After leaving college in 1979, he joined the Soviet war in Afghanistan. In 1984, he formed an organization called Maktab al-Khidmat, which procured funds from the Arab world to Afghanistan in order to fight the Soviets. Osama had inherited money from his family, and together with the money from Maktab al-Khidmat, accommodation and training camps were provided for the jihadist soldiers. Osama wanted a more military role in Afghanistan, so he broke away from Maktab al-Khidmat and formed al-Qaeda in around 1988. Osama returned to Saudi Arabia in 1990. After Iraq invaded Kuwait in 1990, bin Laden met with the Saudi king and appealed to him to use his mujahideen fighters in Saudi Arabia instead of relying on non-Muslim military assistance from the United States. He was denied by the king, and bin Laden began to openly criticize the Saudi monarchy. Bin Laden was banished to Sudan in 1992 for his continued criticism of the Saudi government. In Sudan, bin Laden was disowned by his family, and he became associated with Egyptian Islamic Jihad, the EIJ, which made up the core membership of al-Qaeda. Bin Laden and al-Qaeda carried out various attacks in Algeria, Egypt and Afghanistan, and in 1998 the US embassies in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania and Nairobi were simultaneously bombed, which killed hundreds of people. Al-Qaeda was definitively linked to these attacks. On September 11, 2001, 4 commercial airliners were hijacked. 2 were flown into the World Trade Center in New York City, 1 was flown into the Pentagon building in Washington, D.C., and the 4th crashed in a field near Shanksville, Pennsylvania. Nearly 3,000 people were killed in the attacks, along with the 19 hijackers. Initially, bin Laden denied being responsible for the attacks, but in 2004 he admitted to personally directing the hijackers in their plot. Despite several instances of bin Laden almost being caught or killed in Afghanistan and Pakistan, he remained at large. He was killed by a US Navy SEAL team on the 2nd of May 2011, and his body was buried at sea. St. Paul, or Paul the Apostle, was one of the first Christian missionaries, and his writing forms a great deal of the New Testament. Little is known about Paul's early life, but it is known that he was ethnically Jewish and was a Roman citizen. His original name was Saul, and he was believed to be from the city of Tarsus in modern-day Turkey, but was raised in Jerusalem. According to the Bible, Paul was dedicated to the persecution of the early disciples of Jesus, but he converted to Christianity between 31 and 36 AD. His conversion occurred on the road to Damascus, where he was temporarily blinded after he had had a vision of the resurrected Jesus. He then began describing himself as a servant of God and an apostle of Jesus. Paul stated that he had received the Gospels he wrote from a personal revelation from Jesus himself. After his conversion, he travelled to Damascus, where he was baptized, then travelled to Jerusalem, where he met James of Jerusalem and St. Peter. He later met with Barnabas, a fellow disciple in Antioch in southern Turkey, who Paul travelled to Judea with when a famine occurred in 45 AD. Antioch became a centre of Christianity, and it was here that the followers of Jesus were first referred to as Christians. According to the Acts of the Apostles, Paul undertook 3 journeys, preaching around the Mediterranean, and then travelled to Rome, where he was to stand trial for accusations of treason. He arrived in Rome in around 60 AD, where he preached whilst under house arrest. Paul was beheaded in Rome in around 65 AD, during the reign of Nero, and his remains are said to be held in the tomb of the Basilica of St. Paul in Rome. Paul is undoubtedly one of the most important figures in the history of the Western world. His letters and texts are some of the earliest Christian documents in existence, and 13 of the 27 New Testament books are written by him.